Discover the sinister secrets of 13 haunted Halloween party stories that will terrify you. In the peaceful suburb of Maplewood Heights, October wasn't just a month. It was a declaration of war. Each year, the neighborhood transformed into a terrifying specter of cobwebs, grinning pumpkins, and blood-curdling ghouls, all vying for the title of the ultimate Halloween hub. But this year, dark shadows loomed, whispering secrets that echoed through the streets. Lucy, a devoted mother in her late 30s, felt the change as she decorated her home, vibrant colors contrasting with an unsettling undercurrent. As she hung the final ghost decoration, the flicker of the street lamps caught her eye. Was it just the wind, or the tremor of something sinister? While her children babbled excitedly about their costumes, a brave pirate and a fairy Lucy barely registered their buzz. The laughter of neighbors now felt hollow, and the glances they exchanged over their perfectly carved jack-o'-lanterns seemed loaded with dread. The legend of the vanished children from an infamous Halloween party decades ago threatened to claw its way back into the minds of the community. The tales of eerie shadows darting between houses loomed larger than ever, and she tried to shake off their weight. "It's just Halloween excitement," she told herself. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." But as night fell, the air turned electric. Shadows danced in the moonlight, rustling leaves whispered secrets, and the street lamps flickered like dying stars. Lucy pushed her dread aside, forcing a smile as her children pranced around the yard, begging to invite the new family, a peculiar but enchanting trio who had recently moved in. A chill crept up her spine, gnawing at her instincts, but the joy in her kids' eyes was a powerful balm. "All right, just for the fun of it," she conceded. But then the laughter transformed into chaos. Children screamed, not from joy but terror, as Lucy realized her son had slipped away in the crowd. Fear gripped her heart, clenching tighter as she called out his name, each repetition feeling more futile. The once jubilant atmosphere morphed into a suffocating silence. Her neighbors, with their once comforting faces, now wore expressions of unsettling sympathy. Panic surged in her veins, she felt the world closing in. Desperation led her to local authorities, but their responses were dismissive, brushing her off as the overzealous motions of a protective mother. Alone in her fear, Lucy started her own investigation. The village folklore wasn't just a story. It clung to every house, and the new family held a truth darker than she could grasp. The weight of history pressed down on her, every fiber of her being screamed for her to uncover the ghastly secrets hidden in plain sight. As the witching hour approached, she stumbled upon a chilling relic from the past, a diary, its pages filled with cryptic warnings, echoing whispers of the children who vanished. The ghostly echoes of that cursed party clamored for revival, and the realization sank in her children were in peril. Heart racing, she scanned her surroundings. Every creak of the floorboards sent her pulse pounding, and an unseen gaze bore down on her. Every flinch of movement felt as if the neighborhood was holding its breath, grinning eerily from the shadows. As she ventured deeper into the unfolding nightmare, Lucy braced herself for the confrontation. What lay ahead would test her resolve. Clutching the diary like a lifeline, she raced through the dark streets, hoping to find her son in a community that had transformed into a chorus of dread. The dawn was yet to break, but the horror would keep growing, and it was a race against time to bring back the light before the darkness claimed them all. Lucy sprinted down the narrow street, the cool air biting at her cheeks, urgency fueling her every step. The once familiar neighborhood felt like a foreign land, cloaked in shadows that twisted and writhed like snakes. The knowledge that children had once disappeared here seeped into her bones like poison. The diary clutched in her hand was her only guide but offered little comfort. With every stride, the dreadful whispers from its pages echoed in her mind, warning her of the darkness that lurked just beyond her comprehension. "What have I done?" she muttered, feeling the weight of fear settle on her shoulders. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to protect herself and her kids from whatever haunted this place. But where was her son? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic coursing through her veins. Each house she passed seemed to lean in, watching, waiting. The flickering street lamps threw peculiar shadows that danced, stretching towards her like groping hands. Across the park, she spotted a fleeting movement. A shiver raced down her spine as she focused on the swaying branches. There, a figure, barely visible, darted behind a tree, the glint of a costume reflecting the muted light. A fairy's wings, shimmering strangely in the dark. "Max," she called, her voice catching in her throat. But the only response was the rustling of leaves, sinister and mocking. The nightmares of 1,000 stories swirled in her mind. She could almost hear the echoes of laughter, then the silence that followed, thick and suffocating. She hesitated, heart pounding, frozen between fear and the desperate need to find her son. The park was a catacomb of secrets, and tonight, it felt alive, breathing the very darkness that had swallowed the children of Maplewood Heights. Just as she was about to step into the gloom of the park, Lucy's phone chimed loudly, cutting through the oppressive silence. She fumbled it out of her pocket. A message from a number she didn't recognize blinked ominously on the screen. "They're here. You're too late." Fear clawed at her throat. Who was it? A friend? An enemy? But there was no time to think. She pressed on, past the rusty swings and the creaking seesaw. The air grew heavier, saturated with the scent of damp earth and decay. She was almost at the center of the park now, where the glow of an ominous orange light flickered ahead, beckoning like a moth to a flame. The towering oak tree that loomed over the clearing held stories in its gnarled bark. That's where the Halloween party began all those years ago. Lucy felt an involuntary shudder race through her as she approached. Beneath it, a makeshift altar lay, remnants of lost fun, broken candy bowls, tattered streamers, faded photographs of smiling children long since faded from memory. Her heart twisted with dread. Suddenly, the vibrant orange glow intensified, illuminating the area with a ghastly hue. For a brief moment, she saw them, small silhouettes darting between the shadows, laughter bubbling up that sounded too innocent, too joyful. "Max!" Her heart leaped with hope, but it was quickly snuffed out by the twisted realization. Those echoes belonged to children long gone. "Lucy!" A voice rang out, piercing through the laughter. It was her daughter, but she sounded so far away. "Help us!" Desperation surged, and she looked around wildly for direction, for a sign that would lead her to her children. The laughter was now a cacophony, overtaking her senses. The ground trembled beneath her feet as if the park itself was awakening, its dark legacy rising to claim her. She had to push through the swirling chaos. But as she stepped deeper into the light, shadows stretched and twisted behind her, forming shapes that hinted at the horrors of the past. "What am I doing?" she gasped, standing at the cusp of the otherworldly. Then the laughter stopped. Silence fell, pregnant with expectation. Lucy felt the presence behind her like an icy breath on her neck. She turned slowly. Even the darkness seemed to curl in anticipation. And then there was a face, a pale visage emerging from the shadows. "Will you stay?" it whispered, eyes gleaming with inhuman delight. Lucy froze, wide-eyed with terror, fighting every instinct to flee. The sinister truth crept upon her. A choice loomed ahead. Stay and uncover the fate of her son, or run and risk the horror waiting in her wake. What terror awaited her on the other side of that decision? Would she confront the dark truth buried in Maplewood Heights, or could she break free? The ghoulish whispers flared up in her mind as she prepared to make the choice that would change everything. The air thickened, heavy with an impending dread that enclosed Lucy like a wet blanket. The face before her twisted into a smile, sharp and unsettling. She staggered back, heart racing, searching for a path to escape. Behind her, only darkness loomed, eager to pull her into its depths. It felt like a sinister game with rules woven from childhood nightmares. Stay and play. The voice coiled around her, whispering suggestions that sent icy fingers crawling up her spine. Her mind scrambled for options, but each thought was drowned out by the echoing laughter that had turned malevolent, longing for fresh souls. She regained her footing, adrenaline sharpening her senses. No, she cried out, forcing herself to step back from the inhuman figure that still hovered between the shadows. Was it Max's laughter she heard? Or just a haunting echo? Where are my children? What have you done to them? The figure tilted its head, and for a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of sympathy in its hollow eyes. They are close, waiting, it gestured, the shadows swirling around its finger like smoke. Lucy's heart hammered violently in her chest as the chill of fear twisted deeper within her. What did it mean? Were her children really here? With trembling hands, she raised the diary, the crumpled pages heavy with secrets. It felt almost like a shield, a way to confront the haunting legacy that had gripped this park for decades. I won't let you take me, or my kids. As if the very words had disrupted the dark force, the laughter snapped back into a cacophony, a tidal wave crashing against her sanity. Shadows writhed, and the ground trembled again, vibrating with a restless energy. She felt the earth shift beneath her, as if it were awakening, angry at her defiance. The laughter now turned to wailing, a chorus of trapped souls that pierced her heart. Lucy, a faint voice whispered, coated with desperation. It was her daughter's voice. Help us. We're lost. Lucy's resolve hardened. She could not falter now, her choice had to be made. With a fierce determination, she turned, chasing the sound of her child through shadows and chaos. Every step felt like a battle against the dark. The trees writhed to block her path, their branches clawing at her arms and hair. Max! Ellie! She yelled, her throat raw. Suddenly, she stumbled into a clearing, illuminated by that unnaturally orange glow once more. But the light was flickering now, chaotic, mimicking a heartbeat. A path appeared, twisting away from the altar under the oak, leading deeper into the park. She could feel it calling her a promise of answers, of finding her children. But as she hesitated, the figure from before lingered at the edge of the shadows. You have chosen. Now the game begins. It hissed, voice dripping with excitement, and in that moment, Lucy realized she wasn't just searching for her kids. She was being drawn into a trap. Time slowed as she weighed her choices, the air charged with malevolence. Was she stepping into a glorious rescue, or the jaws of something ancient and hungry? Then, a sudden crack echoed through the night, branches snapping, something rushing toward her. Run, she thought. But what if running meant relinquishing the last chance to save them? Desperation propelled her deeper into the park, where the truth awaited. Would she confront the darkness resting within Maplewood Heights? Or would the shadows consume her long before she could unravel the sinister secrets hidden in those woods? What awaited her in the heart of the park? Would she have the strength to face what lived in the whispers of the night? Or would she become yet another soul trapped forever, lost to the insatiable darkness? Each step was a cacophony of dread, the ground hollow beneath her feet. Lucy fought through the thick underbrush, her breath heavy in her chest. The darkness seemed to breathe with her, pulsing around her like a living thing, wrapping her tighter in its grip. The orange light flickered on the path ahead, its warmth a stark juxtaposition to the icy chill suffocating the air. Help us! The cry came again, desperation echoing in the night. It was Ellie's voice, unmistakable even through the haze of terror. Lucy's heart raced as she pressed forward, past the swapping shadows that attempted to ensnare her with gnarled fingers. Each shadow whispered, each rustle promised malevolence. What horrors lay ahead? Then, all at once, the laughter returned. It morphed, low and rumbling, a sound that crawled under her skin. Every fiber of her being cried out to escape, but instinct propelled her forward. The only way was deeper into the dark. As she crossed the threshold into the next clearing, a chill engulfed her. The air shimmered with energy, thick and electric. In the middle, a circle of old stones rose, ancient crags jutting into the darkness. An altar? It looked wrong, pulsating with the same life as the flickering light, as if it craved something more. "Mommy!" A frightened squeal, Max's voice rang out from somewhere near the altar. "Max! Ellie!" she called, her voice cracking, desperate. From behind her, the sinister figure loomed, its form shifting, growling. "Enter, Lucy. Embrace the game." The words wrapped around her, controlling her breath, forcing her to turn. She saw the glowing symbols etched into the stones, pulsating slowly, rhythmically, invitingly. Were they calling to her? "Lucy!" Her children's voices echoed again, their whimpers tangled with the dull ache of fear. She darted to the altar, but the darkness was swift. The shadows extended like ravenous arms, wrapping around her ankles and dragging her toward the stones. She struggled, but the pull was stronger than her resolve. She couldn't let them be hurt. With a sudden jolt, Lucy wrenched herself free. She reached the altar, waving the diary in the air as if it were a weapon. "You will not take my children." The laughter transformed into shrill screams, scattering through the trees. The ground beneath her shuddered violently, as if in response to her challenge. The stones shimmered, and the symbols began to glow brighter, pulsing faster, resonating with the energy building around her. "Now you will play." The figure stepped closer, its features becoming clearer, grotesque. Lucy recognized the face twisted with malice, someone once familiar. "No, I won't play anymore," she yelled, the words bursting from her like a dam breaking. Suddenly the world flipped. Darkness enveloped her, tumbling into an abyss. The air ignited with electric currents, vivid and sharp, and the cacophony of screams faded into hollow silence. Her eyes flew open. She was gasping, eyes darting around, desperately searching for her children. But she was no longer at the altar. Instead, she found herself in a tight, confined space, the smell of damp earth and decay overwhelming her senses. "Mommy?" A shaky voice came from the shadows. "Max?" Lucy turned, her heart hammering. Was she trapped? "Is that you?" Ellie whimpered, faintly visible in the murky darkness. Lucy crawled toward them, relief flooding her, but it was short-lived. The darkness shifted, whispering softly. "Welcome back to the game." Fear jolted through her. Where were they? "Are we safe?" Max's voice shook. Not yet. Lucy's answer hung thick in the oppressive air as she felt the creeping sensation of dread returning. What could she do next? How far would she have to go to escape? Was there hope in this endless nightmare? The shadows rippled around her once more, the figures of past victims forming at the edges, eerily waiting for her next move, waiting to see if she would challenge them once more. In that quiet moment, all Lucy could do was wonder how far would she go to save her children from whatever nightmarish horror lay ahead. The darkness clung to them, thick and suffocating. Lucy felt it press against her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Panic clawed at her throat. "Ellie! Max! Can you hear me?" Her voice trembled, echoing in the cramped space. "Mommy! I'm scared." Ellie's small voice was barely a whisper. "Hold on tight to each other," Lucy instructed, though she felt the panic rising inside like a tidal wave. "I'm here, I'm coming for you." But as she fumbled in that suffocating dark, the weight of dread settled in. The walls felt like they were closing in, shifting and whispering secrets she didn't want to know. "Mommy, it's too dark," Max cried, and his voice tore through her heart. A soft rustling echoed in the silence, and Lucy froze, listening. The shadows were alive, chanting in a language she couldn't comprehend. Their whispers twisted together, creating a symphony of dread that pulsed in her ears. "Must play," a voice hissed, with a malevolence that made her skin crawl. "Why can't we just leave?" Ellie whimpered, her voice growing more anxious. Lucy fought the urge to scream. The walls seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her heart, and the air grew colder, as if the darkness itself were feeding off her fear. Because she murmured, voice barely a breath, "It knows." The shadows stretched and recoiled, shifting. The pungent smell of decay seeped deeper, choking her senses. In the midst of her torment, a terrifying thought clawed its way up. What if they were not simply trapped? What if someone else was watching? Mommy? Max's voice trembled again, tears in his tone. I don't want to play anymore. Lucy swallowed hard, wishing she could erase the game, wishing she could erase the darkness. Neither do I, sweetheart. But suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. An almost palpable tension crackled as the ground trembled beneath her. The whispers grew louder, like a crowd of souls drawn to a macabre origin. An ancient longing filled the hollow space around them, pulling at her too. The edges of her sanity frayed. Listen to me. We're not going to play. We're going to find a way out. As she spoke, a low rumbling erupted through the darkness. A giggle, sharp and taunting, echoed, ricocheting off the damp walls. It pierced into her bones, sending shivers racing down her spine. She felt their jagged edges tugging at her fears. Why don't you play? The sinister voice cooed, pervasive and filled with dark delight. So much fun. Haven T, you always wanted to play? I said, stop. Leave us alone. Lucy shouted, hope spiraling with each word, though she felt their hold tighten. A bright flash flickered in the darkness, illuminating their confined space briefly. Shadows soared, taking form around her faces twisted in agony, reflecting loss and torment. Your choice, play or be consumed by despair. Ellie grabbed her hand tighter, fingers trembling. Mommy, don't listen. We can't. The weight of their stares bore down, and Lucy's resolve hardened. No, we will not lose ourselves to this. I will save you. But just as she felt the thrill of hope ignite, the very walls around her cracked open. The darkness gaped, revealing traces of cursed landscapes, glimpses of other tortured souls, lost to the malevolent force surrounding her. Welcome to the game. The haunting whisper merged with an echoing chorus, pulling them towards the brink of surrender. What other horrors waited beyond the shadows? Panic began to swell anew as Lucy clutched her children, the ground shifting beneath them once more. Lucy, what if it's a trap? Max's voice shook. Maybe it was, but she wouldn't know until she took a step forward. What choice lay before her now? Would she plunge deeper into the abyss to save her children, or would the darkness drag them all into its monstrous fold? The air hummed with tension, a silent scream wrapping around them. Adrenaline surged as a new thought clawed within her mind. Where was she supposed to go? What horrible path lay before her now? Choosing would mean risking everything, but could she trust whatever game awaited her? Her heart raced in a terrible rhythm. And then, from the depths of the shadow, a single question whispered, "Are you ready to play?" The chasm of darkness yawned before them, an unfathomable void. Lucy's heartbeat thudded in her ears, a frantic drum summoning her to make a choice. The walls pulsed with a life of their own, thick shadows coiling like cold tendrils around her. She swallowed hard, tasting the bitter metal of fear. "Mommy, I don't want to play," Ellie said, her voice barely cutting through the heavy air. Lucy tightened her grip. "Neither do I, Ellie. But we can't just sit here." She felt an urgent push from inside, a pull towards the unknown. With a shuddering breath, Lucy took a step forward. The ground beneath them squirmed, a deceptive carpet of darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. "We need to move." The shadows groaned, a cacophony of moans that clawed at the edges of her sanity. "Why fight it?" The sinister voice echoed through the murk. "Just play. Stop it." Lucy screamed, furious, unyielding. She dragged her children forward, pressing ahead into the unknown. Suddenly, the world twisted. Fleeting images breached the shadows. Children with hollow eyes, lips pulled back in grinning horror. They danced in the gloom, their movements jerky and unnatural. Lucy felt bile rise in her throat. "Look away," she commanded, but Ellie squeezed her hands tighter, trembling. I can't see." "Then close your eyes." Max clutched his sister, burying his face in her little blonde curls. "What are they, Mommy?" "Just shadows," Lucy replied, her voice cracking, urgency pouring into every word. "They're not real." Their steps quickened, moving further into the suffocating darkness. But with each footfall, the whispers became a wild chorus taunting, mocking. Stay and play. We've prepared so many games you'll never want to leave, just as despair threatened to engulf her. Lucy felt something, a rough edge against her palm. A doorway? A crack? This way. Drawing in a shaky breath, she pushed forward, praying the shadows wouldn't close in behind them. Her heart raced as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The children followed, but something shifted within the darkness. Without warning, a frigid wind swept past them, chilling Lucy to the bone. The whispers turned to screams, mingling into a maelstrom of terror. You can't escape. You're already part of the game. They stumbled through, legs feeling heavy, the darkness coiling like serpents. We have to keep going, Lucy shouted, desperation fueling her. But everywhere she turned, the labyrinth of shadows closed in tighter. Mommy, Ellie cried, her voice breaking. What if we're lost? No, we're not lost. Just stick together. Lucy pushed forward, sweat beading on her brow. The air thickened, pressing down, almost suffocating. Then, a sudden silence fell like a stone. Lucy halted, confusion washing over her. The oppressive atmosphere pulled back, revealing an eerie stillness. What now? She whispered, looking around. A glimmer of light pierced through the darkness ahead, flickering like a dying star. Mommy! The light! Max exclaimed, hope suddenly igniting in his voice. Stay close, Lucy warned, feeling her heart flutter with a mix of dread and determination. They moved toward it slowly, cautiously. Each step felt like an admission of vulnerability. What awaited them beyond that light? And just when they thought salvation had finally come, the ground quaked beneath them again. A low growl reverberated through the air, a warning or an invitation. Lucy couldn't tell. Mommy, I feel scared, Ellie spoke, her small voice trembling in the vast silence. Me too, sweetheart, Lucy whispered, because she knew that whatever lurked just beyond that flickering light could be more terrifying than the darkness they were already trapped in. What if it's another game? Lucy's throat tightened as she faced her children. The light shimmered and pulsed, beckoning them closer. What lay in that glow? Was it hope? Or something far more sinister? Are you ready to find out? The voice echoed again, each word dripping with malevolence, teasing them into the uncertain yawn of fate. They were teetering on the edge, between the light and the shadows. What choice would she make next? Lucy felt an icy grip on her heart as the flickering light seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in the thick air. There's something there, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, shaky with fear. Max clutched Ellie tighter. What if it's a monster? Ellie whimpered, burying her face in his shoulder. I want to go home, Mommy. Lucy closed her eyes for a moment, battling anxiety. Home felt like a distant memory, lost in the shadows. But this light, was it a way out? Or a trap set by those lurking just out of view? The voices continued to murmur, tantalizing and flinging taunts. Come closer, it's safe, just play, stay behind me, Lucy commanded, though dread filled her veins. They stepped forward together. Each footfall echoed like a drumbeat of impending doom, reverberating against the cavernous walls. As they crossed the threshold of light, an overwhelming pressure crushed against them, like stepping into an ocean. Suddenly, they emerged, not into a sanctuary, but into a room filled with darkness so deep, it felt tangible. Shadows darted like insects, swirling and shifting, casting eerie shapes that danced along the walls. In the center of the room stood a table, draped in a hideous black cloth. It was piled high with grotesque, mismatched toys, each one seemingly alive, eyes blinking with a devilish glint. A rusted jack-in-the-box sprung up, arched eerily, its painted grin wide and teeth sharp. Playtime, it screeched, making Ellie scream. Get away from that, Lucy shouted, lunging forward and pulling Ellie away. The dim light flickered, and a distorted laugh echoed off the walls, sending chills through Lucy's spine. The toys began to move of their own accord, pieces twitching and lurching as if they were puppets on strings, playing a sinister melody only they could hear. You don't know the games we play, they chanted together, their voices harmonizing into a sinister chorus. Lucy instinctively stepped back, pulling the children close. We need to find a way out. This isn't a game we're not playing. Panic surged through her, each breath shallow and quick. Mommy, look. Max pointed toward what appeared to be a door on the far wall, bathed in a faint glow. It contrasted sharply with the malevolence surrounding them. We can go there. Before Lucy could reply, the room shifted. The shadows thickened and swirled, closing in on them. You want to leave? But why? The fun has just begun. The toys sang with twisted delight. Run! Lucy shouted, fear igniting a primal instinct. They dashed towards the glowing door, but the shadows reached out like grasping hands, curling around their ankles, slowing their progress with each frantic step. Mommy! It's pulling me! Ellie cried, panic painting her voice red. Hold on to each other, Lucy instructed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She fought against the weight of the shadows pressing down on them, anchoring them, pulling them away from safety. Just as they were about to reach the door, a shadowy tendril shot out, slashing towards them with a speed that made Lucy's blood run cold. Caught Max snaking around his leg. He yelped, eyes widening in terror. Lucy! The voice echoed, echoing in her mind like a terrible truth. Frantic, Lucy tugged against the shadow, pulling Max back against her. We're not staying, she screamed, her voice fierce with resolve. With a swift motion, she threw herself forward, ramming her shoulder against the glowing door. It gave way under her weight, flinging open and spilling them out into a narrow corridor. But as they tumbled through, a figure loomed just beyond the door, silhouetted against the dim glow. You shouldn't have come here, it hissed with a voice like gravel. It stepped forward, revealing icy eyes that glinted with malicious mirth. Lucy froze, dread wrapping around her heart like a noose. What do you want? She demanded, fear twisting her insides. Just to play, the figure grinned, stepping closer into the light. And in that moment, Lucy realized they were far from safe. They were players in a game far more sinister than she had ever imagined. What did that figure want from them? Would they become part of the Shadow's cruel game? The corridor felt alive, pulsating with the thrum of sinister energy. Lucy could almost hear her heart beat, echoing against the walls, a frantic drummer in a horror symphony. She could sense the children trembling beside her, their breaths coming out in uneven gasps. She turned to Max and Ellie, their faces pale and wide-eyed, reflecting back the fear that gripped her. Stay close, she urged, desperately holding the hand of each child. They pressed onward, the figure behind them a chilling specter, looming in the flickering light like a ghost from a fraying nightmare. Where do we go? Max whispered, glancing back as if expecting the figure to spring forward. Just keep moving, Lucy replied, grounding her thoughts into sharp focus. They stepped cautiously through the corridor, shadows flickering along the edges of flickering light, weaving and retreating as if sentient. Each step felt heavier, weighted down by the looming dread that filled the air. The walls were lined with grotesque portraits, distorted faces grinning wider, eyes following them. Lucy couldn't shake the feeling that they were alive, mocking their every move. Mommy, I don't like this place, Ellie whimpered, her voice breaking. Lucy opened her mouth to reassure her, but then the air shifted, a cold draft sweeping down the corridor. The shadows coalesced ahead, forming a swirling mass that seemed to pulse with anticipation. Look, Max pointed ahead as the light flickered violently. The corridor began to widen, opening into what looked like a grand hall, shadows roiling in festoons. A low hum reverberated through the air, a chilling melody that resonated deep within Lucius' bones. They stepped into the hall, the air thick with something foul. It was filled with more toys, but these were different. Their forms grotesquely warped, each one more disturbing than the last. A ragged, tattered doll with button eyes and twisted limbs sat propped against a wall. It seemed to blink, the buttons gleaming in the dim light, a twisted smile painted on its cracked face. Welcome, welcome, sang the haunting chorus of voices from nowhere and everywhere. Lucy shuddered, instinct urging her to turn and run. But she couldn't leave the children behind. "Don't look at them. Just focus on me," Lucy instructed, crouching to meet their eyes. "We'll find a way out. Promise." But as she turned back, the figure stood at the mouth of the hall, framed in darkness. It grinned wider, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" Taunted, words slithering through the air like venom. With a sudden clash, the door at the end of the hall slammed shut, thudding with finality that made Lucia's heart race. "Run!" she cried, and they sprinted toward the other end of the hall as the toys began to rattle, some creeping toward them with unnatural speed. The shadows inched closer, curling around their feet, and Lucy could feel the oppressive weight of the space closing in. "Don't look back!" A cacophony erupted. The toys began to shriek, their high-pitched laughter chilling like nails scraping against glass. Lucy's grip on her children tightened. They were moving, slipping, shadows and laughter coming closer, dreadful hands reaching for them. As they neared the wall, Lucy's breath caught. In the dim light, she could see a faint outline of what looked like another door, but it shimmered like a mirage. Could it be an escape, or was it another trap? "Keep running. We can make it," she urged, every muscle heroic against the terror that threatened to engulf them. With one last push, they flung themselves toward the door, but as they did, a voice, low and malicious, hissed from behind them. "No more running. Little ones, it's time to play." At that moment, the laughter erupted into a thunderous roar, shaking the very walls. Lucia's heart raced, pounding in her chest like a war drum. Was there still a way out? Could they defy the shadows that sought to claim them? The gap between Lucy and the door seemed to stretch impossibly far, shadows curling like sinister vines, reaching for her like hungry beasts. She felt the breath of the lurking figure behind, a chilling chill weaving through her spine, urging her to push harder, run faster. "Come on," she shouted, a desperate plea coated with fear. Max and Ellie matched her speed, but she could feel their little bodies quivering with dread. The shrieks of laughter behind them morphed into jeers, mocking their frantic flight. "Why do they laugh?" Ellie whimpered, her voice a raspy thread against the chaotic noise. "What do they want?" "I don't know," Lucy gasped, stealing a glance back at the mass of toys that had leaped into motion. There was a life to them that defied reason, as if their very existence revolved around tormenting the living. They were closing in, hands and claws reaching with grotesque fervor. A wind whipped through the hall, sending the shadows swirling like a blizzard of nightmares, whispering taunts, calls for attention that turned Lucy's stomach. "Mommy!" Max's cry was pure terror, pulling Lucy from her dark contemplation. The door loomed ahead, now flickering in and out of focus, a beacon of hope surrounded by dread. "Almost there," she yelled. Gritting her teeth, she felt a surge of adrenaline. With a final push, they lunged together, shoulders colliding with the apparently solid door. Instead of resistance, it swung open, but not to freedom. They stumbled into a tiny, cloistered room, dim-lit and thick with dust. Cobwebs hung from the corners like threadbare shrouds. The air was stale, suffocating, ominous. Lucy flipped around and slammed the door shut, a booming sound echoing through the thick silence. In that instant, quiet reigned, but it was a deceptive calm. The oppressive feeling of being watched crawled over Lucia's skin. The children clung to her, their breath mingling in the stillness. "Where are we?" Max whispered, his wide eyes scanning the desolate space. Lucy turned, scanning the room for any signs of an exit, but the only other wall was lined with mirrors, their surfaces cracked and dusty, reflecting distorted images. A sudden shudder coursed through her as she caught sight of her own reflection. It was distorted, twisted. A figure that should be warm and comforting appeared pallid and monstrous. "Look at the mirrors," Ellie gasped, clasping Lucia's hand tighter, panic etched on her small face. The mirrors weren't just reflections. They whispered secrets and shadows, revealing fleeting images of twisted toys mocking her with grinning faces. "Stay away from them," Lucy urged, pulling her children further into the room. avoiding the cursed glass as if it was a venomous snake. But the reflections took on a life of their own. They began to swirl, the figures gaining shape and form, mocking her words, their eyes glinting with mischief. "Time to play, Lucy." A voice echoed, thick with malice as the mirrors began to tremble. "You can't escape us." Suddenly, the door behind them rattled violently as something collided against it, echoing with a weight that was all too familiar. The children jumped, and Lucy felt her heart drop. They were trapped, surrounded by laughter and filled with shadows, isolated in a room of horrors with a malevolent force inching closer. "Lucy, what do we do?" Max pleaded, desperation leaking into his voice. "I don't know," she whispered back, panic creeping in her chest. But as she stared into the mirrors, a dark realization struck her. What if the way out lay among the reflections? The children shivered beside her, waiting for an answer, as the haunting laughter began to filter through the walls. Lucy's grip tightened on their hands, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of determination. "Look, we have to find a way out." She stepped toward the mirrors, courage rallying amidst the rising tide of despair, knowing she was teetering on the brink of something unspeakable. But before she could voice the plan, a mirror cracked loudly, spider webbing across its surface, and the figures began to emerge, there, laughter devolving into howls that drowned out the sound of her heartbeat. The walls groaned, and the world around them blurred as the reality of the house began to shift violently. "Lucy!" Ellie screamed, as the door shook and splintered, shadows creeping through the cracks. Would they break free, or would they become just another story, another echo in this dreadful place? With the walls closing in and the laughter escalating, Lucy took a deep breath, ready to confront the darkness, her destiny entwined with secrets that waited to spill forth. What awaited them on the other side? Did the mirrors hold salvation, or would they reveal something far more sinister? The air tense and electric, Lucy stood before the cracked mirrors, battling the panic rising inside her as the shadows shifted ominously around her. "We need to break this cycle," she whispered fiercely, a new fight igniting within her. Taking a deep breath, she led her children closer. "Trust me," she urged, glancing back at those twisted reflections. "We're with you, Mommy," Max said, his voice quaking slightly but laced with determination. Ellie nodded, her hands squeezed tightly around Lucy's. They were ready. The wall quaked, laughter reverberating through the air like thunder. Lucy felt the shadows twitch and stir, reaching for them, but her resolve only hardened. "We won't play with you," she shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony, fueled by the love she felt for her children, the desperate need to keep them safe. "Enough!" the voice echoed, twisting through the air like a living thing, severe and commanding. Shadows twisted and shrieked, unresolved anguish flooding the room. "You think you can defy us?" The mirrors shimmered, eerie and captivating. But Lucy narrowed her focus, refusing to be lured in. "Those aren't our reflections. They're not real," she yelled, the words echoing within her, solidifying into a rallying cry. "We are real. We refuse to be part of your game." In that moment, she felt a surge, a powerful bond coursing through her, solidifying her purpose. Releasing her hold on the children, Lucy stepped closer to the cracked glass, the swirling images that danced within seeming to flicker and falter under her gaze. She lunged forward and slammed a fist against the mirror surface, shuddering as each crack splintered wider with defiance. "You're nothing but shadows." The air trembled, the laughter screeched to a halt, replaced by shrieking silence. The cracked mirror pulsated, bursting into a kaleidoscope of light that swallowed them in brilliance. Lucy felt an otherworldly force grasp her, enveloping her in warmth, terminating the cold, suffocating fear that had clung to her very bones. "Mommy!" Ellie screamed, her hands slipping as the energy tugged at them. "No! Hold on tight!" Lucy shouted, fear ignited into flame as she yanked them closer. They braced against each other as the world around them began to twist, imploding on itself with each crack of the mirror shards flying into the air. "Keep your eyes closed," Lucy barked, twisting them away from the blinding radiance. As a burst of brilliance engulfed them, the world began to shatter. With one last resonating crack, everything collided, sending them tumbling into an open expanse. Lucy stumbled, recovering her footing, her heart racing as the breath of freedom filled her lungs. They were outside, the air sweet and crisp and still. She glanced down, relief flooding her as she held Ellie and Max tightly in her arms. They were safe. The shadows of that terrible place were gone, replaced by the familiar silhouettes of the Maplewood Heights neighborhood, colors bright and vivid beneath the autumn moon. "Mommy, we did it!" Max shouted, jumping up and down with excitement. Ellie clung to her, tears streaming down her cheeks, but now mixed with joy. "Yes, we did," Lucy breathed, losing herself in the warmth of her children, squeezing them tight, absorbing every ounce of the moment, the realization washing over her that they were whole, together, alive. But something fluttered at the edge of her consciousness. Dark silhouettes shifted in the shadows of nearby trees, as if the anger of that night had not been fully vanquished. The laughter echoed softly, hinting at the lurking despair still waiting patiently for another chance. Lucy stiffened, looking back at her children's smiles, pure, honest joy. "We'll tell everyone," she declared, resolution surging in her veins. "This darkness will not come again. We will share what happened." As they made their way home beneath the vibrant stars, Lucy felt the weight of the history on her chest. She would not let Maplewood Heights become a prisoner of its past. As they reached their welcoming front porch, warmth pooled in her heart. She had faced the shadows and emerged victorious. They would breathe life back into the town, joy back into Halloween. The laughter of children would now paint the streets brightly, transforming the ruinous echoes into tales of hope. She swore an oath, in whispers against the dark. "I promise, my sweet kids." Lucy knelt, pulling them close as the peace settled around them like a warm quilt. "We are the light, always, and no one can take that away." As they hugged tightly, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and for the first time, the night felt safe again. But somewhere deep in the shadows, the laughter faded, leaving only a chilling whisper. Next year, and off in the distance, another neighborhood began to bleed darkness, awaiting its game. Now that it's over, will you keep these tales alive? You need to subscribe now, not just for this story, but for the exclusive ones coming next. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm, so we can share more suspenseful stories you love. Flood that comment section with your thoughts, reactions, and wild theories about what could happen in the next chapter. And don't wait even one more second to share this chilling conclusion with at least 5 friends. They need to witness this terrifying tale. Your support means everything.